Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sydney. I work at ESPD and I've also been involved in the SIMS project. Thanks for being with us today. We are here as part of the Sports Inclusion Media Seal project, SIMS for short. Over 2 years ago, the organizations here across the table saw that there's a lack of diversity in stories portrayed by sports journalism. Yes, while there'll be lots of publications about Real Madrid's latest coach and how Djokovic is doing in Roland Garros, there are other amazing things that deserve coverage, such as grassroots sports organizations, movements that are promoting social change, people using sports for, social change, athletes with different abilities, and such women's for sports as well are still not covered enough. So the SIMS project saw this gap and set out to highlight the value in making sports journalism more inclusive. So today we'll cover a few things. We'll talk about the challenges in raising awareness for inclusive sports activities and how journalists and organizations that work to increase diversity in sports can work together to increase the visibility of the activities. So let's start by learning a bit more about the SIMS project. We have a person representing each project partner here. So can you please just say a few words about yourself, introduce yourself more.
Okay, thank you so much. About myself.
Yeah, about yourself, about your organization, your favorite food.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark. I'm half French, half Spanish. I'm based in Madrid, Spain. I represent España Se Mueve, which is a Spanish media group, 100% focused on inclusive sports. We are probably one of the only in Europe to do that. 100% focus on inclusive sports. We have medias like TV, radio, magazine, social networks. We work every horizons of related to medias. Myself, I have been for the last 30 years consultant in European projects. I started here 32 years ago in the European Commission as an expert. And since 1993, I've been working in Spain, counseling and helping private and public institutions to work in all kinds of European projects, programs, or whatever.
Sarah?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sara Bollarino. I am a psychologist and I work from NEPNET from Italy, which is a consortium of vocational education and training providers. Specifically, we come from Veneto region, which has only this region 18 training centers among the region. And our role in the project has been to coordinate the development of the training modules, since our expertise is in training. And then we also supported the overall creation of the process. Martin?
Hello, I'm Martin Masur. I'm from Argentina. I'm a football sports journalist. I've been working in the sports industry for more than 25 years, and with IAPS, specifically the International Sports Press Association, since 2015. I started as a mentor in the Young Reporters programs with IAPS. And then I'm also director of the IAPS Sport Media Awards. And this project is another step forward in IAPS interest of having a better sports journalism across the world. IAPS, by the way, is represented in 160 countries, so quite an international association.
Thank you. Gaetan?
Hi, my name is Gaetan Garcia. I'm head of operations for TAFISA, the Association for International Sport for All. TAFISA, we are really working at empowering and helping any kind of stakeholder. So we're talking a lot about ministries, national Olympic committees, international sports federations, but also national sport for all federations, universities, municipalities, etc., in really using the power of sport for all to create a better world. So sport for all and physical activity for health, of course, but also for social inclusion, gender equity, education, And of course, the question of inclusion in and through sport is very relevant. So where IEPS is representing more the media part of the project, we would say we are representing more the global sport for all community because we are an umbrella organization for 400 members across 170 countries right now.
Thank you.
And I'm Rachel. I'm also head of operations, but at the European Association for Service Providers for Persons with Disabilities. So we represent over 20,000 disability services across Europe, and we work towards the full implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, enabling to live the life that they want to live. And we are on the project to support the inclusion and accessibility aspects of the community.
So Mark, España se mueve with the coordinators of the project. Can you tell us a bit more about the context, how SIMS came about?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would like to thank you, of course, because I didn't. Thank you so much, CSPD, to invite us and to give us the possibility to explain the project, where it comes from, who is working, and what will be the result of the project and what we expect in the next future. I would like to make a first definition of what we know about sport inclusion, inclusive sport. Many countries, they have at national scope information about what is inclusive. It's people with mental, intellectual, or physical disabilities. That's what, at least in Spain, for instance, the Ministry of Sport understands inclusive sport. We, in the project, it's a European project funded by the Erasmus Plus sport program. We understand inclusive sport, all kind of sports done by all kind of people. It means, as Gaëtan said, it concerns people with disabilities, people with age, the oldest, the youngest, women, men, people in risk of exclusion, people trying to be included, everything. So it's everyone. That's the first thing. The second thing is, before I got into the project, we had the chance 1 year ago to be part of the IEPS International Congress. We had 400 sports journalists, experts, and we asked a question. Do you know what inclusive sport is? And I think it like 3-4 journalists raised their hand saying, okay, I know what it is, but the others, they were just like expecting. And the second questions would be, do you know what is journalism applied to sport inclusive? And no one raised their hand. Today, I think it has changed a lot thanks to IEPS into the project and all the dissemination that IEPS has done to the project, but it explains why we presented the project. The project in España se mueve, 6 years ago, we decided to present a project to the European Commission under the Erasmus Plus, because we knew that no one, at least in Spain, didn't cover any kind of inclusive sport events. And when I say event, it could be a conference, it could be a sport game, whatever, anything. So we decided to see if it was the same case in other countries. So we present a project, a small project financed by the European Commission, and we came to the same result. No one does in Europe, at least some coverage, media coverage of sport inclusive. Or if they do, they don't disseminate it or they don't show what they're doing. So we had this project, very interesting, and we had a conference in Madrid, a European conference, and some of the participants decided that it would be interesting to at least give to the journalists, sport journalists, the opportunity to show to the rest of the world that they're also working in inclusive sport. So we presented the SIMS project, sports inclusive media skills. The idea is just to identify which sport media are covering inclusive sports and give them the, let's say, seal, bronze, silver, gold, according to the level they have doing that. It could be an influencer, it could be a huge international broadcasting company, anything could have at least the seal. So we decided to design with the we have been trying to work with the best partners. I think we had the last 2.5 years showed us that we have been very accurate selecting the partners, and we get many deliverables, output products that we are going to present to the European Commission by the end of July to see if everything is okay. And Probably in September, we're trying to make it public worldwide. And we're hoping that soon you will have all of you all over the planet with more information about the SIMS project.
So what are the main products that the project has created? And how do they promote inclusion and diversity in sport?
We have created, each partner had its function into the project. For instance, ENAIP, they are a vet national company in Italy. They're also a member of EFTA, which is a huge network all over Europe. They created, because they have some experience, a certification process. It means that we need to have some tools to send to the medias, asking them some specifics, items, campaigns, products, publications, whatever, to see where they were standing. So ENAIP made this certification process. That's one of the deliverables. We have it's not 100% perfect, but we can run thanks to that. So we will send the process, we will use the process, the journalists, experts to the other medias to ask them, please fill the questionnaire, send all the information you have about what you've been doing for 1 year regarding inclusive sport, and then we will make an audit and we will give you the feedback. That's one deliverable. The other one would be, we have a training module we have done specifically for journalists, sport journalists, because that's how I started my intervention. We knew that they don't have information. They don't know how to deal with inclusive sport. It's not the same to give a coverage, and there are many journalists, sport journalists here that have more information that I have, but it's not the same to cover Cristiano Ronaldo playing a football game than some Grammys having a run in the municipality. That's inclusive sport. So it's not the same. So they need to learn. So we've done this module. It's another deliverable of the project. And these are the main two deliverables of the project that we will use. We will disseminate all over the planet using the partners networks, but also using the European Commission network, and anyone who would like to join us in the future to be certified or to help us to get the others certified.
Thank you. Thanks for setting the scene. We move on to Sarah. So could you
Yes,
explain
thank you.
a bit more about the purpose and design of the SIMS seal process?
Well, yes, as Mark already anticipated, we have designed this certification flow, which can be a flexible but methodic process to assess and recognize entities who demonstrate a genuine commitment to not only promoting and communicating, but also providing coverage of inclusion in sport, such as to stay in the theme of the Erasmus project and the European values. The purpose of this project is to finally contribute to a greater social inclusion, more diversity, and equal opportunities, not only in the sports sector, but also beyond, as doing a good practice with this project. The picture you see is the idea of the certification flow. We start with the publication of a call, which entities can apply. And the call has been public, and entities interested could download an application kit, which was the template to fill in with all the information about the entity, a sort of pledge of commitment. And then a list of evidences, we call them, of products, as Mark said, that demonstrate their commitment and their effort during a period of time we decided was last year, the last 12 months, of events covered inclusively, or inclusive events, or articles, and other products, photographs, videos that the entity had made. This amount of evidences passed through a first evaluation, where our evaluation committee, which was in the piloting as in the project, would ask the entity to fill in potential omissions or inaccuracies. And then we choose to develop the training to deliver for the highest levels of the certification. We will talk later about this bronze, silver, and gold scale. But during the piloting, we decided to deliver the training to all levels because it was first time testing this process. And so all entities passed through also the third phase of the process, the training. And after the training, a final evaluation will be done with a more detailed evaluation of all the evidences and a process of assessment of the right level. Because in our idea is the entities would apply for a specific level, doing a sort of a self-assessment of the level they should compete for. But during this piloting, this experimentation, we decided to assess ourselves the level of the organization who was applying, to see the difference, also the network of the entities, the difference between the form of the entities, because we had single journalists, content creator, but also communicator entities who did the sport and had a communication strategies, but were not covering as journalists. So the entities were so different. We had to assess once we had them. And this is it. We defined the process through the awarding of these entities who did the piloting. For Italy, we effectively did not have journalists as a network. We had two entities who are active in sport and promoting inclusion in sports. And we had this conference where we thought about the importance of communicating, because it is the same as not doing it if you don't communicate what you do. So we focused a lot on importance of promoting this kind of activity, not only doing them.
Thank you. And how did you structure the requirements of the application?
Well, the requirements have been structured in 3 levels for the kind of entities and their how they are spread their network and their possibilities. We decided to make these 3 levels of commitment, which have 3 different difficulty of requirements. These levels has been named bronze, silver, and gold, with the difference in the definition also. A bronze level is the entry level of a media entity. It can be a small business, it can be less specific, it has less quantitative indicators to reach. A silver level already has more requirements, has the training to do, and higher indicators to reach, and is a communicator promoter level. A gold level should be the premium level for bigger entities who also have a inclusive communication strategy already existing in their communication plan. So distinguishing these 3 levels permitted us opening the call for more kind of entities, from the single content creator to the biggest media entity with the biggest network. The quantitative indicators and qualitative have been defined through the number of evidences, number of articles published during a year, number of events or articles per month, because there's also the factor of continuity during the year of promoting inclusion. And qualitative aspects focused on the originality of the content, the spread throughout the social media channel, and also the network who re-promoted the events throughout their entities. So by this mix of quantitative and qualitative aspects, we could define the effort, the total effort of the entity throughout the process.
So that's interesting what you said. It's not just about covering maybe an inclusive sports event like the Paralympics, just one moment in the year. It's about continuing.
We focused a lot on continuity because media entities, biggest media entities could also be having the instruments, the tools to publish a lot in a short period of time and participate through the call. It's less fair to a continued effort for some entities that have this in their values. So we had to not only focus on quantitative, but also on quality and on continuity.
Great. So now we move on to Martin. We're going to hear a bit more about the people that took the course, the journalists, and what was the reaction. So you're responsible for the piloting phase, working with journalists and social media entities. How was the feedback from the participants on the SIMS course?
Thank you, Sydney. Well, I think the feedback was overwhelmingly, overwhelmingly positive, which is a normal thing if you consider that they are already signed, so they showed some initial interest in the project. It's also an extra responsibility because if they have an interest, you need to give them at least a proper course, workshop in order to raise that expectation. And I think we were very happy with the feedback that we received. And sports media, as it is now, it's going through an explosion in terms of the content that is being published all around different channels. But there's also kind of a fog, you could say, that sometimes things are done automatically without reflecting, without thinking, because you think you have to do that. And for the people that took part in the workshop, one of the most interesting things was, first of all, to define inclusive sports, what Mark was saying, you know, because yes, I know what it is. It's like, okay, let's go to the Paralympics. Yes, but the Paralympics is once every 4 years. And what about the rest? And what about other target groups? And what about going to non-inclusive sports with an inclusive perspective, which was also something that we focused on, because let's say the Champions League final will be played in a few days, and everyone will be clicking on the winner, the winning goal, and so on. But maybe the most clicked story outside the ones that we already expect will be one kid that was playing outside and had a beautiful story, a mom that went there. So we are looking for these kind of stories as audience. And the problem is that when we find something published, most of the time, except for very specific cases, as Mark said about España se mueve, this content arrive by accident. It's not like there is not a framework or a guidance to know exactly what sports inclusion mean and how it can impact on the audience. And there's another big discussion that many young journalists especially are suffering inside the newsrooms. That is a little bit like the egg and the chicken, no? So who came first? Then science proved that the egg came first, but it was like the impossible riddle for many years, no? Who came first? And here is what came first, the content or the audience, no? So no, you need to give the audience what they want. So let's go mainstream, let's go only football, let's go only men's football, let's go. And if we channel into such a narrow path, we are leaving aside a lot of other things. The problem is that without having the proper education, which is what we did in the initial workshop, many people don't even know what they could do. And yeah, it's a beautiful story, but where should I put it or how? So again, it's a part of the developing process. So they were happy with the examples. We provided a lot of examples as well of what can mean an inclusive sports story and the different kinds that are there. So in order to show not from a theoretical paper, but from actual examples, what they can do and how they can open up a little bit their minds to find these kind of stories. Then there will be the discussion about whether we need to have a special section for this. Of course, our idea is that it needs to be like a transversal revolution that reaches every page and every the page of the print newspaper and every page in the news, right? But that's for later. At least with the proper framework that we provided, at least we are sure that now the target groups are easily identifiable, and then you can go and search for these kind of tailored stories.
So it's amazing that because of your network, your global network, we had so much interest worldwide. It wasn't just EU organizations or journalists. You were getting interest from everywhere. So you saw a lot of great examples and stories. Is there one that just comes to mind so you can tell everyone an example of a really inclusive sports piece?
Well, as I said, when AAPS opened up any kind of call, suddenly we have already 100 countries signing, and this is normal for AAPS. But it was beautiful to see the reaction of so many journalists, because in the end we reach the actual people that are writing the stories and creating the videos, and with the interest of first of all knowing more. No, so this is already a good sign. Because as I said, we live in this kind of revolution with a lot of content there, but we are all in the fog, and we helped in a way to open up a road inside the fog to see, okay, this is the trace that we should follow. Now, going from the European to the international level, there's a lot of people with interest in this kind of coverage. And this is also part of the requirements for the GOT level, that is to be not only communicators, but promoters. And so this is an extra, I would say, credential for being a journalist, because as a journalist, you're mostly a communicator. But if you want to promote this kind of initiatives, you need some sort of help also from our side. And then you also discover how important it is. For example, in the AAPS Awards, we have received 2,065 submissions from 136 countries. So reviewing this kind of submissions, we had a lot of photography portfolio because it was the Paralympics, yes, but there were fantastic stories that I can guarantee would be publishable in any major worldwide publication, because they are fantastic stories from indigenous athletes in Bangladesh, from women's football performed by elderly, actually it was Granny's football, the title of the submission, in Zambia. And so even by looking at some of the people's expressions there, I can see the interest, which is going back to the egg and the chicken. What comes first, the audience or the content? Because if you think that you have to provide the content that the audience want, then you fall into a trap. The idea is to provide the content that the audience will enjoy, but they don't still know that they want that content. And I'm telling you that it's to have Europe behind. Of course, it's a sort of lighthouse for the other continents. I'm from South America, so I know very well. But the interest is there in Africa, it's there in Asia, and it's there in the Americas as well, and Oceania, of course. So the idea is to expand this, because if it's an international need, then we need to step up and give them also to the rest of the people in the world. How can they perform better in this field?
Thank you.
May I jump 50
sure.
seconds about what Martin just said to complement what he said? The SIMS project had 3 main objectives. One, according to the target group, as he said, the medias, we gave them more contents, and they have more possibility to be to offer more content, sport contents, anything related to sport to the audience. The audience, they have the possibility also to see what they wanted to see about. We're talking about the cousin, the grandma, the grandson having things. It could be local, regional, national. And then the employability that we are enhancing for the journalists, because they have new skills, new competencies, new ways to do their work. So there were the 3 main groups that were directly targeted inside the project.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to Gaetan. The International Organization of Sports Pole have been responsible for the dissemination and the impact of the project. What has been your experience in engaging media professionals?
Short answer of it is that it's been, which I found quite interesting, because we are representing a very vast network. And a lot of the organizations that are part of our network, ministries, Olympic committees, or even International Sports Federation, they do get in touch regularly with media professionals through their activities, right? But the interesting thing is that as soon as we talk about sport for all, no one is here anymore. Even these organizations, sometimes very powerful ones, when they do something that has to do with sport for all, they struggle themselves to get the interest of journalists or media professionals, when they have no problem as soon as it's about competitions and so on. So that's a bit the paradox we have, because when you look at sports in the media and the coverage, from my perspective as someone who is not in the media, I find that it's mostly elite sport that are covered. But when you look at the big picture of sport, elite sport barely represent not even a fraction of 1% of all the sport that happens worldwide. So we have already a first paradox, because there's a massive gap between what sport really represents and the coverage and exposure of sport in media that people have access to. The second aspect of this, and this is a bit also to build on to what Mark and Martin shared, you have all these fantastic stories out there. And I'm not just talking about nice stories that are feel good, but I'm talking about stories about initiatives that change the lives of people positively, where people through sport, sometimes they regain the joy of life, or they have a new chance at life. So something that can have a very deep and long life-lasting impact on themselves. And it's interesting that if you look at social media, etc., you have a lot of viral stories about beautiful things, about things that make people cry for good reasons. But somehow we don't see these stories. And a lot of our community, we are really about sport for all to contribute to the sustainable development goals. So really about this positive aspect on the lives of people. And they don't manage to get the stories told. A majority of them, they run programs, the program get funding, they change the life of people, but no one knows about it. So there is a big injustice here, because they are denied the chance to get the stories of what they're doing to be told, which could help them also to get more support and to also shine a light of the importance of what they do for society, but also of what sport can bring to society. There's an injustice from the side of the media as well, because they are missing out, as you were saying, Martin, on stories that could be shared and stories that could also help them be different. Because when you're going to have the Champions League final next weekend, you'll have 100 different media that will all cover the same story, and a lot of them, for 90% of the content, will be in a very similar way. The only difference is that each of them have their own loyal base of audience, and that's it. That's who is going to click on there. But no one is going to be really different. Here you have a lot of stories that are just waiting to be told that allow you to be unique and to bring something additional. And then there's a big injustice as well on the side of the public in general, because the public has a right to know. This is the first duty of journalists, to inform, right? So there's a lot of things happening out there, things that sometimes is even paid for by tax money. I mean, we're talking about a European project. This is the tax money of European people. And then no one is even aware of it. And then people are wondering, okay, what is my tax money going for instance? But look, you are literally changing the lives of people for a better world. You are promoting inclusion. So we feel that there's a massive gap. And for me, there's two sides of the equation. One is indeed, as has been discussed, the training for media, the interest, the awareness of what they can do to change the situation. From the perspective of Sport for All, it was interesting because when we had some talks, when we had some content in as part of a webinar or conference or something like this, we actually had a lot of interest from organizations who are not media professionals, but who had an interest in learning about this, in learning about what can be done there. Because I think they also think about how they can learn to better tell their story. So that's also another side of the equation where it's a kind of not intentional aspect of the project that some of what we are doing is still going to benefit to people who are not directly communicators, but who will need to learn some of the skills. But for me, the massive and the main takeaway was that we are struggling to connect the media professionals with our world, which is the Sport for All world. And so we are trying to find ways to bridge this gap because there is an interest clearly from media professionals. There is an interest as well from the Sport for All community. But currently they are struggling because they lack the resources, the tools, and sometimes the common vocabulary to talk to each other and to find ways to get these stories told. So this was the takeaway from our experience, but it has been positive because through the project, we have actually managed to increase a little bit the contact we have. We've increased the awareness, and I think we are making steps in the right direction now to get these stories out there and to get the story of sport inclusion and inclusion through sport more accessible.
Thank you.
I think also from ECVD's side, as an organization in the human rights, social inclusion space, we really struggled in the project to make contact with media entities and to connect with them. And it'd be interesting hearing later about the experiences in the room, about how to improve that and your experiences too. And I think that's also why it's so important to have APS in the project and particularly their leadership with journalists in bringing forward inclusive sports, diversity in sports. I think that's really been a real strength in the project to help improve that connection and yet show leadership.
And hey, Dan, you're saying that it's really difficult to bridge this connection, but we've learned a lot in the process. If there was any kind of recommendation you'd give to one of your members or small sports organizations wanting to make that link, wanting to get their stories published, is there anything that you could tell them?
Absolutely. And that's also something that we have taken away for ourselves. We do some capacity building as part of the network. We try to empower our network. So we share some resources, some ideas, some content, knowledge, and also capacity building. And we are trying to do more in the field of impact and monitoring, but also in the field of storytelling, because this is the problem. You are running a project, an initiative. You are aiming to change the lives of people. So you're recruiting people who are good at organizing grassroots events, people who have the specific skill sets needed to coach, for instance, or to approach communities and to work with them. Then you make sure that the project is well administrated, you know, from a financial perspective, everything is in order. The project is over, you make your report, and that's it. You have no one who is able to, who has the skill set to share a story, to take nice photos, nice videos, who is interested in sharing the story on social media, etc. It's getting there more and more. But for us, this was the main takeaway that we need to encourage this sort of mindset from our members more, that they need to learn at the very least the basics of storytelling, the understanding of the importance of it, and knowing that, especially if we are coming from a position where we already don't have visibility, if we want to talk to media professionals, we also have to be able to explain to them what we are doing. And sometimes this is difficult. Sometimes when you say sport for all, people have a general understanding. An example is like I say, oh, I work in sport for all, so sport for everyone. And people think, oh, Paralympics. Like, well, I understand where you come from because it's inclusion, but actually Paralympics is not sport for all because it's only for elite athletes actually who have a very high level of skill set already. So it's already very exclusive, but it's interesting. So already being able to tell a little, to explain better what we are doing, to tell this story and to think outside of just running a project, but also being okay. If I'm running a project or an initiative, I have to think about the resources I'm going to dedicate to telling the story, because it's very important as well. There's a resource I'm dedicating to measuring the impact that I have on the lives of people and sharing that impact. So for us, this is, I think, the homework that we have to do from the side of sport organization that work in sport inclusion.
Now we move on to Rachel. So at ESPD, you've been responsible for increasing the inclusive approach of the project, making sure that we're true to our values. So what are the key considerations that were considered?
Yeah, so as Mark said, we took a very broad approach to inclusion. And so I'll start with a disclaimer that it's very difficult to make something inclusive for everybody. And inclusion can be a very nuanced process as well. But we tried to develop a set of guidelines or a checklist that helped promote the broad accessibility of the SIMS deliverables for as many people as possible. And to do that, we focused on 3 main pillars. So we had our value base, so making sure that the deliverables were in line with human rights values and also those of ethical journalism, independence, transparency, accuracy. Another key pillar was accessibility, so looking at the technical accessibility of documents, ensuring that we're using alternative text for images, you're using accessible fonts, font sizes, considering color contrast. Also really important, especially when we're talking about journalism, is the easiness of the language to understand, minimizing the use of jargon or explaining that jargon when you're using it. These are just some of the guidelines that we provided. And then the third important pillar that we took forward was co-creation. So making sure that you're involving the relevant target groups in the development of the outputs. And that's something to take forward both for the deliverables of the project, but also for the work of the journalists moving forward. So are you actively engaging with the target when you're designing the results and when you're developing them, and also in the finalization? And we did that in part through the project partnership, as we had lots of different target groups within the partnership, and also at points that required us to look outside the partnership and engage with others.
And ASPD were also responsible for a glossary that I think is quite interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about?
Yeah. So part of this, part of the training or supported the training was developing a glossary of terms that are more in line with the correct terminology that you should be using when referring to different target groups, different activities, to support journalists in their writing when they're talking about and engaging with different target groups, helping them to feel more confident and more empowered and moving forward in their work.
And what recommendations do you have for organizations looking to embed a stronger inclusive approach in their media strategies?
So I'd say start with assessing what you're already doing and where you are, looking at both the stories that you're talking about, who's being featured, who isn't, but also looking at your audience, who are you reaching out to, what communities are you reaching out to, maybe who's been underrepresented, and you can reach out to them further through your channels and your reach. A training of staff is very important, and that was a key pillar of the SIMS project, making sure that journalists have access to training that can help them move forward in having more inclusive journalism. And then also coming back to this co-creation, having a participatory approach. It can take time, but you need to actively engage with your target group, the people who are included in your story. You need to make sure it's not tokenistic, and these people are empowered to tell their own story as they want it. And for that, building partnerships can be very important, reaching out to inclusive organizations, community leaders, and media allies.
I was conscious we're going to be at the break soon, so I just wanted to open up the floor for any questions. We have some different expertise here. I don't know if someone wants to ask something. Yeah, Freddie.
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm Freddie Jussia. I'm from Inclusion Europe, and we represent people with intellectual disabilities and their families. I had a chat with our members like a couple of days ago about sport, and I asked them what is important for them. And they asked me, the most important thing is that sport share the values of inclusion. So what you presented, Gaetan, in the beginning, social inclusion, equality, but it has to do also with the independent living, etc., etc. This is the values that you presented also, Rachel. So I'm wondering, based on your research, based on what you have been looking for, do medias present inclusive sport that way? Do they also share the values of rights, of inclusion, the values, for example, of independent living, etc., etc.? This is my question, because you presented, Gaetan, Gaetan, that it's more about competition, it's more about elite athletes. So I wonder really if, based on the picture you saw, if it's like this. Second question then, do you have something in the training that you made in the certification that also assess these values? So
for the first, I'm happy to take, thank you for your question. And again, I think there is a lot of uncharted territory in the media because there are the way that, first of all, newspapers and then also going to the digital world were structured. It's either football and the rest of the sports in many countries. No, it's football and then the rest of the sports. And in the rest of the sports, you have men and women's sport. And there you go in the elite level. No, so how do you go in deep down in the grassroots in how in those pages with people that are used to filling 30 lines because there is no more space. So again, it's part of the challenge, I think, the media. And let me tell you one thing, there is another thing now with the algorithms, no? So the statistics that we get for every story that's published. And there is the wrong perception that if I publish, let's say, the story about, I can tell you, Yemen football tournament that in the end it won the AAPS Sport Media Award portfolio this 10 days ago. If we publish something about Yemen football, it's not going to be interesting. And if we publish about the women, the grandmothers playing football in Zambia, now it's not going to be interesting. If we publish about an athlete that is running in a local Paralympic, not the Paralympic Games, but in a local Paralympic, it's not going to be interesting. But then again, this is like an empty shell because we are not telling the proper stories here and we are not selling in the proper way. Now, if I tell you that this athlete, that he runs very, very quick and he has his limbs and so, but he has a tattoo here because he tattooed his MRI with part of the brain that is all dark, in order to show that he's a proper Paralympic athlete because he was, well, now I got your interest, you know? So the statistics that we get, no, this story didn't perform well. Why? Because it was about grandmothers. No, because it was wrongly sold, or the storytelling wasn't good. Because as a football journalist, I can tell you that most of the football stories, men's football stories, don't perform well because it's what he said. 90% of the people already know this story before clicking on it. And there's no one daring to say, well, let's not publish any more about men's football because they are not performing well, you know? So it's kind of a paradox that we need also to show the way in order to improve the coverage, because everyone wants content now, right? So even organization, let's go for content. Okay, let's go for content. And what do we do with content? Oh, no, let's do what they are doing. And they are doing this, so we do this again. And they want stories. The stories are there. So it's like a natural marriage, but it's not happening for some reason in many big media outlets. So this is part of our mission, I would say. And go ahead. The second was for you. No?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I can add to that because from the side of the sport for all community, you think sport for all, there are some people who are really organizations that are really specifically focusing on inclusion, especially for accessibility, person with disabilities, etc. But there's a lot of other organizations that do sport for all, for communities, for kids, for other topics that are not specifically on that. And at the end of the day, these people are just regular members of society. And you see that the state of society, I think you might agree with me, awareness about these topics is very, very low still. The understanding of what it's about is very low. I can even share my very humble experience. I had the chance to participate in a project that was specifically on inclusion. And I had been working already for 5 years in the field. And suddenly I discovered a whole new world. I learned so much that I completely, things that were very easy actually to explain and to understand. And I had never had access to this information before. And so this is a little bit, not to take away responsibility from the media, but to say, even within that field, there's so much ignorance going around. There's so many people who will tell you, oh, let's have a program for people with disability. Oh, maybe we do A, B, and Z, and they will be happy. It's like, very much, we create something for them, like very ancient mindset, honestly. But it's still there. So we have a lot of work to do in raising awareness, in explaining how this works, in including also all these people in the decision-making process, etc. Because right now they're not there. There's no platform for the diversity of the community that we pretend to represent and that we pretend to cater for, to actually be in leadership position, in decision-making positions, to also be part of the process and telling us, okay, guys, this is how we do it, because obviously you're not aware, and this is fine that you're not aware, but let us also guide you. So we are very far away from that still. And I think that's a lot of process that needs to be going on. I think it's getting better. More and more people are getting awareness, but we still have a long way to go.
And then about the course, making sure that we cover this criteria of rights, inclusivity.
Yes, I have a few words about it. I actually forgot to explain better the modules of the course. We structured it in 4 chapters, being the first one an introduction to the project, and whole detailed phases, target groups, and contents. A second module on only on inclusive communication. The glossary is part of it, and the importance of an aware and right communication in inclusion. A third module is about communication strategy, and in this part we focused on the importance of, as Martin said, not only covering the sports everybody covers, but also stories of non-competitive sports are important, are valid, and can be a story. And this part of the module, I think we have our answers, because you find the difference between normal communication, inclusive communication, and the importance of being inclusive in covering sports. Even if the event is not inclusive and not specifically inclusive as men's football, but covering it in an inclusive way can be an example of communication. And the non-competitive category is one of our topics, because we never focused on only competitive sports. And in the 4th module, to conclude, good practices, where you can find every kind of sports coverage example of these topics, being them a normal event covered with an inclusive approach, or inclusive initiatives that have been making notice. Thank you.
Sorry, if I can come in as well. I think the course, as we said, is very, very broad. So we're talking about, for example, independent living people with disabilities and those that discourse. I think the training is a first step, raising general awareness of journalists and asking them to start asking the right questions, speaking to different people, and broadening their horizons. And there's still obviously work to do in the different aspects of inclusions to make sure journalists are properly educated on these issues. And through the promising practices, we can also increase journalist awareness of these different areas. So I think we need to be looking to always increasing these practices. And for example, having more stories in the different areas of inclusion, including disabilities and these wider discourses around independent living and the right to be in the community.
Moi, je peux parler en français ou?
Bien sûr.
Bon, bonjour, moi c'est Captain Georges, je représente l'ASBL EcoSport. Et donc j'avais deux questions. La première question c'est pour Monsieur Martin. Je vous ai vu avant vous avez mentionné paralympique. Et moi je m'occupe spécifiquement du handisport avec les personnes en déficience auditive. Et je suppose que vous savez que les personnes sourdes ne participent pas aux Jeux paralympiques. Et donc je voulais un peu savoir concernant tout ce qui se passe aux Jeux concernant les disciplines sportives auxquelles les sourds prennent part, comment vous réfléchissez ou comment vous abordez les sujets, les thématiques pour pouvoir couvrir les événements, parce que les événements sont presque parlés dans les médias. Et je prenais pour exemple, par exemple, en 2023, je ne sais pas si vous avez su qu'avant, il y a eu la CAN, la Coupe d'Afrique des Nations. Moi, j'ai vu ça sur les médias belges, etc. Et quelques mois avant, il y avait la Coupe du monde des sourds en Malaisie, dont j'ai participé avec l'équipe nationale du Cameroun. Je n'ai entendu aucun média relayer ça, et pourtant ils sont dans l'inclusion. Et c'est une compétition, il y avait 17 pays, notamment l'Angleterre, les États-Unis, l'Australie, le Brésil, l'Argentine, l'Iran. Ben, tous ces pays-là, aucun média n'a relayé cela. Donc je voulais un peu savoir, puisque la thématique c'est sur l'inclusion au travers des médias, c'est ça, donner la visibilité aux personnes en situation handicapées via les médias. Donc je voulais un peu savoir quand il y a des compétitions comme ça de cette communauté qui est minoritaire, qu'est-ce que vous mettez en place au niveau des mécanismes pour être informé des compétitions, pour pouvoir couvrir, pour pouvoir aussi leur donner la visibilité, étant donné que le handicap de lucidité reste un handicap invisible et qu'il faut vraiment donner la visibilité à cette communauté via les médias. Est-ce que vous avez des réflexions par rapport à ce type de handicap ou pas? Et ma deuxième question viendra pour vous.
Je vais d'abord traduire la question parce que Martine ne parle pas français. So basically, it's talking that about a person with disabilities, especially a person who are deaf or not hearing. And I explained that unfortunately the coverage of them is not very good because in the Paralympic there's no game or event where they can actually participate. And he was taking the example in 2023 before the African Cup of Nations, there was actually the World Cup for deaf people in Malaysia with 17 countries participating, and from his perspective, there was no media participating, no real coverage. So what would be the mechanisms that you can put in place from the perspective of media to have some coverage of disability, especially invisible disabilities, like people who are deaf or not seen in society, if there's anything that is done to increase the coverage?
Thank you. I will answer in English. Recently, in one of the submissions that we received for the AAPS Sport Media Awards, there was a story about a deaf football team in the UK, in which a famous deaf actor was visiting the team, and only one of the coaches, he was the only one that was, and probably his assistant were the only two that were able to hear, and they were the parents of deaf children. So it was a very nice story. So when you have a very nice story like this, and then I find out that there's this World Cup you mentioned, I didn't know, and I feel bad for not knowing this, but it's also part of the discovery of this project, because imagine if we could set an agenda, a calendar for the year with a lot of inclusive events that not many people are looking into. It's a fantastic, it's like going for we are looking for stories, no? So it's like going for a gold mine when no one else will be there. And we are all going for the gold in the Champions League final, which is very difficult in terms of making a difference. Now, we want to be there because, yes, it gives us visibility. But the other thing is like a fantastic storytelling Having said this, why on media over the years, since the digital world became the norm, traditional media, newspapers, then they have the websites, right? Going with the same kind of content from print to digital. And then there was one moment in which they said, no, we need to incorporate blogs. If you remember blogs, why? Because there was outside the media industry, there was a blog community that was flowering, and they were getting audience. So what did media do? Well, let's bring bloggers inside our channel. And then social media, again, no, we need to be on social media. Why? Because the audience is shifting towards social media. So we need to have presence in social media. Then after a few years, we need to bring podcasters. Why? Because the podcasters are getting the audience. So we need to bring them here. So you know what? I think, and I hope that the change is going to happen in a good way or in a most difficult way, which is if we as content creators, now it's also a big discussion, are content creator journalists, well, okay, let's have this discussion. It's very interesting. But if the content creators finish by publishing this kind of beautiful stories, beautiful doesn't need to be beautiful in terms of sometimes it's dramatic, but it's something that you enjoy reading because you feel empathy to these kind of stories. So if these stories are being published somewhere and they begin to get visibility, they will end up in the traditional mainstream media in a good way or in a bad way. In a good way, it's like the journalists will adapt and they will go looking for these kind of stories. The other way is, as it happened with blogs, with podcasts, okay, let's bring the new people that are outside, the content creators that are doing this kind, let's bring them inside because we don't know how to do it. So either way, I think inclusive sports will end up taking a lot of content in traditional media. But so far, it's only the beginning.
Deuxième question.
Here?
Yeah.
He's
Okay,
the second
sorry.
one and yeah, sorry. Quick on,
Oui.
there you go.
Ma deuxième question, maintenant Gaëtan, vous parlez français, donc vous entendez bien. Vous avez souligné le fait que vos actions, c'est vraiment de manière concrète pour vraiment changer la vie de certaines personnes. Et donc, moi, ma deuxième question se porte sur un projet concret, notamment. Et donc, je voulais savoir, au travers de cette approche médiatique, de ce que vous voulez mettre en place pour donner la visibilité aux personnes en situation de handicap, qu'est-ce que vous pourrez donc faire? Par exemple, je vais vous montrer donc ici, concret. En fait, nous sommes en train de réaliser un court-métrage basé sur une histoire vraie. Mon projet est né parce que j'ai un neveu qui est sourd. Et comme il était sourd, des enfants de son âge ne voulaient pas jouer avec lui parce qu'ils disaient qu'il n'entend pas. Comment on peut jouer avec un enfant qui est sourd, on ne peut pas faire du sport. Alors, la première étape qu'on a fait, c'est qu'on a rédigé un comic book dans une BD qui retrace son histoire. Et pour aller un peu plus loin maintenant, on est en train de réaliser un projet cinématographique donc, qui raconte son histoire de manière visuelle pour encore donner plus d'impact. Donc, je vais vous mettre ici ça en anglais, comme ça c'est plus facile pour tout le monde. J'ai une version bande-annonce en anglais. Et comme ça, vous allez me dire ce genre de projet, comment on peut donc le concrétiser parce que ça a un impact. Et on travaille les écoles spécialisées et les écoles ordinaires. Comment on peut donc donner un impact à ce projet qui est une façon de sensibiliser de manière concrète avec des supports pédagogiques. Et ce sont des élèves d'une école qui a mis les voix sur ce projet, École internationale de Montgomery.
I've got some friends who said they're going to play football this afternoon. It's your answer. Come on, let's play. Okay, Aaron. Hello? Ignore them, Armstrong. Don't make fun of him. He's deaf. He just wants to say hi and come play with you.
Oh no, a deaf kid playing football? That's ridiculous.
What? And why not? You're just saying that because you don't have anything.
Oh yeah? And how's he gonna hear when we ask him to pass the ball?
Yeah, go Mullen. Are you deaf or what? I'm telling you, he can play. He might even be better than all of you.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
Ça serait intéressant, je ne sais pas si la vidéo est déjà disponible, mais si vous pouvez la partager.
Du projet, donc voilà, on est en train de le finaliser et on travaille en collaboration avec des écoles pour pouvoir donner ce côté pédagogique. Les écoles ont un rôle majeur à jouer dans tout ce qui touche l'inclusion. Donc voilà, ce support, par exemple, comment au niveau de votre projet médiatique d'inclusion, comment vous pouvez accompagner ce genre d'initiative pour que ça puisse avoir une portée internationale, puisqu'on est en train de le réaliser en français, en anglais, en espagnol.
De notre point de vue, moi, je vois deux aspects intéressants. Le premier aspect, c'est on peut toujours partager ça dans le réseau des gens auxquels on arrive à s'adresser, tout simplement, pour montrer ce qui se passe, ce qui existe. Ça peut servir de bon exemple, de bon exemple médiatique, d'une part, bon exemple de communication, comment on raconte une histoire, mais aussi de bon exemple de projet. Nous, on est toujours aussi à la recherche de partager les bonnes pratiques, les bons projets qui ont un impact avec nos membres pour ensuite voir si ça peut les inspirer, etc. Donc, je pense que c'est un peu l'aspect principal pour nous, c'est voir comment on peut partager ça au sein de ce réseau et ensuite voir si ça peut avoir un certain écho, une certaine réponse de la part des membres du réseau. Je pense que c'est un peu l'idée principale. Mais partagez avec nous, s'il vous plaît, ou même la bande-annonce, ça serait toujours intéressant. Merci.
Maybe a last question from us.
So Sebastiano from the European Platform for Sport Innovation. So I'm not a journalist, I'm not a press expert, I'm more a reader of sport news, let's say. And the approach that as a reader I'm facing every day is basically the fact that I'm bombarded constantly by sport news of all sorts. And most of them are not even interesting, as you were pointing out. So the overall feeling is that the business model of sport journalism is in many cases based more on quantity rather than quality. Whereas the approach that you propose is really quality based. So you need to build a story, you need to find the right story, to frame it in a proper way, make it interesting and so on. So my question is, how do you see this approach in comparison with the current business model of sport journalism? Do you think that, for instance, major players in the sport journalism would be also inclined to adopt this kind of quality over quantity approach? Is it feasible given the current landscape? I don't know. That's why I'm asking, basically, because I'm not an expert and I see that the direction that they're going is just basically pouring tons and tons of news that normally are not even that interesting. And I don't know if approach that you're proposing, how would compare, let's say, in relation to the one that is.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastiano. Look, sometimes it feels like this media industry that you mentioned is like a train that is going too fast and no one knows how to stop. And the only premise is to keep going even faster. But I could accept that it would be a big challenge if the media industry was flourishing and getting a lot of money, but it's not the case. It's actually the opposite. No, it's a crisis everywhere. There is a crisis in print. There is a crisis in advertising. So the only thing that is not under scrutiny is the search for content, which is for me the key aspect here. Is like, we had the quantity versus quality battle. We had a prequel 15 years ago when it was, okay, let's publish more stories, shorter. Because it was all based on the page views, no? So the revenue, very small margin, was coming from the number of pages that you clicked on. Then it shifted from page views to time spent. So it became not only about the number of pages, but the time you spent on the website, this time you spent on a story, and then long form journalism kind of resurfaced after sort of no, long form is a dead format. No, it resurfaced. So with social media, it started the same. We need to publish more and more and more and more, but then where's the revenue? In some more followers, and only that, and then the business from one day to the other, it changes because, well, Meta changes the algorithm, and you were having organic reach, and suddenly there is no more organic reach. You need to pay for that. So again, the only thing that is not in question is the good stories, and you know, something that happened to me. Totally unrelated, but it was a beautiful story that I found from Argentina. It was published in La Gazzetta dello Sport. And then I remember it was the first time that they told me, you know, it was a beautiful story, but especially we got a lot of subscriptions from that story, which is also part of the model now. So if you reach the people, and the people are deciding to pay for more content like this, so we have already a good answer. Now, the revolution means you keep being bombarded with this kind of content, but the media needs to move aside a little bit, because if the media will publish what you already received on WhatsApp or on Instagram the day before, it's a dead end. So this is why we need to look for new stories. And this is why I strongly believe in this idea of this is the place where to find the new stories.
Gonna take a 10-minute break.
Very brief. Fernando Soria, Secretary General of España Segovia. I just wanted to ask something in relation to your question. So, of course, there is a lot of uncertainty about the future, about the situation worldwide. A lot of instability, changes as well. At the same time, there is a lot of pressure under the companies, especially media entities, to make profit. They have to be sustainable at the same time. But at the same time, we are in a position, we have a responsibility as well. So we don't know about the future, but we know that something has to be done. So we are defining a path, and we are starting to walk this path. And we are also working with the different stakeholders. So we have designed a holistic approach. So we are working with media, with communicators. We are working with inclusive sport promoters as well. We are also starting to work about more education, training programs as well. And at the same time, we raised some questionnaires to see what was the feedback from journalists and media entities, and it was positive as well. In Spain, for example, because we asked for Spain, we were in conversations with some media entities, very important ones. We'll see.
Great. So we're going to take a 10-minute coffee break. I encourage you to carry on the discussion, having a cup of coffee, and thank you for all the interest.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. We're going to start the second panel on supporting inclusive sport through journalism under the title, What is the Way Forward to Increase the Visibility of Inclusive Sports? We have our speakers. Maybe you can introduce yourself one by one.
Yeah, so very nice to meet you, and thanks for inviting us. I'm Sebastiano. I represent the European Platform for Sport Innovation. We are a membership-based network located here in Brussels, and we gather approximately 200 organizations, both private and public, that are active in the field of sport at all levels. So from clubs, federation, companies, public authorities, universities, non-for-profit organizations. So we basically help our members to develop projects, share their knowledge, and also develop business opportunities with a particular eye, let's say, for grassroots sport in general. So we are not a press body, we're not a media organization. But we work with also with media organization and with all sort of stakeholders in the field of sport.
Welcome, Sebastiano. So hello everybody, I'm Marlise Royer from Stop Racism in Sport. I'm a project manager of the organization, was created in 2020 by Thierry Witzel. It's a deputy in Belgium and also the father of Axel Witzel, if you know it. So our organization, the role of our organization is go on the fields to do intervention about what are racism and what are racial discrimination, and also to create a learning platform, for example, for coaches, for managers, for supporters, and for athletes. And we also work in so in club sport, in club, and also with federation.
William?
Guillaume, I'm Guillaume from the Belgian Paralympic Committee. I'm marketing and partnerships manager and spokesman. The Belgian Paralympic Committee is the national Paralympic committee for Belgium. So we prepare and participate in the Paralympic Summer Games, Winter Games, and now also the European Youth Para Games. But we are also the national umbrella federation of almost all para sports individually, so athletics, swimming, cycling, etc. So we, with our member federations, of course, in Flanders and Wallonia, Brussels, we develop the sports from the grassroots to the elite level. But at the Paralympic Committee, and my colleague Hélène is here also, we mainly focus on the elite sports and the preparation and using the Paralympic Games momentum to make sure the Paralympic movement in Belgium can continue growing.
So much.
Hello, Fernando Soria, Secretary General of España Se Mueve. In relation to my background, I come from law and finance. I was working for several years in the pharma industry, and then I came back to Spain, and we built the Institute of España Se Mueve. Mark talked a little bit, but basically what we do is promoting sport for all, inclusion, and also communication. We are mainly focused on communication, and we also work with all the stakeholders related to these different areas, health as well. And now we're very happy to be here. Thank you very much to SPD, to AIPS, and to the partners.
Thank you. And I'm Nadine Hassan, Communications and PR Manager at AIPS, the International Sports Press Association. Let's say the governing body of all sports journalists around the world, with over 160 member nations. I will start my questions to Marie-Lise. What are your experience of trying to raise awareness in diversity and inclusion in sports?
So I say we work on the field directly to try to promote fighting against racism, but we also try to promote inclusion because it's be together. So, and for example, we go on school or on the clubs sports, and we do like role play with kids to they can feel what inclusion can do inside you. And by this way, we also we debate about, okay, I feel exclusions, and how can I promote, how can I show inclusion on the way, and that the other people don't be excluded by my actions. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the things that we do to
let's say, what are the actions that Stop Racism in Sport did, let's say, in this year calendar? What do you have on the calendar?
So, for example, we do a lot of e-learning platforms. So we create like free to past years, and for the managers on footballs, one for the coaches about racism, homophobia, and the gender questions, and also a platform is called Monitora with an Erasmus project. And so this is a part of the e-learning modules. And we also go on the field. It's what I say. We go and we speak with people and we asking they need focus about how we can help you to fight racism or to how to be equipped to fight racism in sport.
Do you find responsiveness like from the youth, maybe in helping promote and be advocates for, let's say, anti-racism in sport?
Yeah, we see that the youth is very receptive to the action, and with, for example, the tools that I say to you, the introversion with exclusion, leaving inclusion by exclusion. We also see that they realize the mindset change, and they say, okay, now I don't want that the others feeling this exclusion feelings. So I will change my mind, change my word, change my way of playing, my way of doing my sport, and don't be in that exclusions mindset.
Yeah. In your opinion, what can be done to promote more inclusive sports media journalism?
I think one of the things is have conscious to be aware about. We all have stereotype. We all generate stereotype and prejudice. You need to be aware about that. So you need to, I have take notes to not forget with some things. So it's one thing. Another thing, it's about sport journalists influence the perceptions of what we have about sport, what we see about sport, because it's the first line. So on the media, on the papers, on TV, it's the first things. So I think they need to have the good words and don't let the stereotype speak before. I mean, the stereotype don't be to be the, I don't really, it's complicated in English, sorry.
To be dominant.
Yeah, to be dominant. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also, I think that I have a story in Belgium like a few years ago on TV. A journalist received some people on the table, and one of the people have a discrimination speech, and the journalist react as a good way and banned the discrimination speech. Say you can't speak like this. Does not admit. And the fact that the journalist on the TV say that things that you can't have this discrimination speech have a big impact, I think, on the publics, because you can't keep silence. You need to act. You need to say, okay, it's not a good way to speak. And I think it's a good reaction, and hoping that more journalists this reaction is.
Yeah. We will move to Mr. Sebastiano from the European Platform for Sports Innovation. Can you please share with us your current work to promote inclusion and diversity in sports?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed, as mentioned, we are a network of many different kind of organizations. So for us, what is really important is to start from the needs of our members that are really diverse. So from this point of view, we know that there is a lot of need for improving the awareness of general audience for inclusive sport. And this is a request that we receive constantly from all our members, federations, grassroots sport organization, but also public authorities. So those are somehow the most vocal, I would say, actors when it comes to requiring more awareness for inclusive sport. From our point of view, our role, so we are not acting on the field, but we are somehow connecting the dots, meaning that as a platform, what we try to do is to merge forces of different kind of actors that would like to pursue these kind of activities. Normally we do through European projects, and we have several projects that are dedicated inclusive sport. We have projects that are about promoting mental health through sport. And for instance, out of one of those projects that is an Erasmus project, the first ever World Cup for football World Cup for people with mental issues was organized, and it became actually a huge story, especially in Italy, where the main partner was based, because they managed to really tell a story about this. So there was a documentary produced by the Italian national broadcaster, RAI. It's still available on the national platform if you want. There was a TV series made out of this story. So the nice thing is that sometimes, I mean, it's not always the case. It's always an effort that you have to put, but you manage to find stories that are really breaking through somehow. What we try to do with our members is always to try to support them in defining exactly the kind of activities that they would like to pursue, to promote inclusive sport, and help them in securing the funds to do it. Because of course, we have plenty of members that are doing amazing things in many different countries, from the grassroots level up also to the federation level. But sometimes, of course, they lack the money to continue supporting this kind of activities in the field of inclusion in sport, because sometimes are activities that are not generating revenues, at least not for the moment. So we try to help them in securing the means to continue their activity, but also support them in ensuring the sustainability in the long term. And here a very important player, especially in the sustainability dimension, are companies. Companies that can become sponsor of this kind of inclusive sport action. Why? Because of course we're talking about journalism, but it's quite I think important not to forget that also companies are also when it comes to advertising and to marketing are always looking for stories, and exploiting this need for interesting stories, good stories, stories with a social impact. It's quite important. So we try also to ensure the sustainability of inclusive sport action and projects by telling company, look, would you like to step in and support this organization, this project, this initiative? In the end, you will invest some money, but you will have a return because you will have a story that you can promote through your channels, for your communication activities, for your communication campaign. Maybe it's not journalism, but it's somehow connected. The fact that we are talking about stories, we have heard this word a lot in the previous panel. So we need to find good stories, interesting stories, stories that people ultimately want to read. So when it comes to our activities to support inclusive sport and the recognition of the role of inclusive sport, what we try to do is really to connect all these dots, all these players that are active at the European level, sometimes in a very scattered manner. So maybe there are similar initiatives going on in different countries, but the people that are implementing these initiatives are not aware of the fact that somewhere else it's happening something that could be that is pretty similar, or at least that there are other organizations that they could establish synergies with. So our role is really, look, you're doing this in in Italy, in Finland, or in Spain. There are some people that are doing something similar in Germany. Why don't you join forces? We try maybe to start normally with a European project, because this is what we do as a European network. But then, of course, this is just the starting point. You have a nice project, it can sustain your activities and maybe improve them, of course, for a few years. Then you need to be able to stand on your own feet, basically.
Sustained.
Exactly, to ensure the sustainability. And there we try to step in with a more, call it sponsor-oriented approach, but really to identify also the private funds and private means that can support these activities. Ultimately, yeah, our role is a bit this, to allow our members that are active in many different domains, among which includes sport, to implement their activities, to continue operating and
let's say the challenges you face. You mentioned that let's say gaining funding to continue some activities for some associations, but what are the challenges that you face as an let's say European platform, and at the same time for those that you, let's say, cooperate with in the let's say national level?
Well, sometimes I think one of the main challenges that we face is that all these organizations are doing amazing things, but of course they are extremely busy with what they're doing. So it's quite difficult for them to go after other opportunities, other funding opportunities. So of course we are here to support them, but in general, what we see, especially for smaller organizations, is a lack of knowledge of the opportunities and the possibilities that are out there. This is clearly our role to step in, but it takes time. It's an educational process, I would say. So you need, for instance, when it comes to European project, but also when it comes to liaising with private entities, you need to develop a certain mindset. You need to start looking at things from a certain perspective, which is not necessarily yours as an organization that are active on the field. You're doing great things with your athletes, with your kids and so on. But sometimes you don't have the time to follow all these possible leads that you have. And then, of course, you are missing some really great opportunities to continue working, to improve what you are already doing, to expand your activities. And so for us, the main challenge often is to convince people that, okay, there are opportunities. It takes time, it takes some effort, but ultimately it can be a real opportunity for you. And yeah,
in your opinion, what can be done to promote more inclusive sports media journalism from the media side?
Yeah, this is something that I asked my colleague in charge of communication. She's a journalist, so we had an exchange on this, of course. For us, at least, what's important is to really frame the stories in a way that is appealing to the audience. And it's a, let's say, two-side story, because of course you have the audience that is expecting certain things, but audience can also be educated. So you need to find stories that are appealing, but you need at the same time to dare to propose certain stories, because of course you will never know how the audience will react. So sometimes I think the expectations are based on some kind of lame prediction of the audience behavior. But if you don't dare to propose interesting stories, challenging stories, you will never know. On the others, yeah.
Think like how the reader or viewer thinks, maybe.
Exactly. So on the other side, it's also quite important to find sustainable business models for journalism. That's also was a bit the point of my question during the previous panel. We know that the business model of
of journalism in general, and maybe for sport journalism even more, is quite fragile at the moment. So there is a space for more curated contents, more intriguing and interesting stories, but it takes a bit of courage, I would say, to do it. From our point of view, what we try to do, of course, we are not a media agent, but we have a communication department, and we try to do exactly this. So we have a network of 200 sport organizations all over Europe. So we have a huge repository of interesting stories. So my colleagues that are in charge of communication, they try to go and find all these stories. It's not always easy because, I mean, you ask people and they learn, maybe they do not reply, they're doing their own thing. So you need to find stories. But what we try to do with our network is really, okay, let's ask if, I don't know, the Italian Taekwondo Federation or the grassroots sport organization in Estonia, they may have interesting stories to tell. Our role is to create the story, let's say, somehow, or at least to frame it in a way that is interesting for our audience. So we also try to give visibility to what our members are doing.
Correct. We move to Mr. Gobert from the Belgian Paralympic Committee. What are your experience in raising awareness for diversity and inclusion in sports on, let's say, national level and European level?
But it's really, despite being a sports organization, which we are at the basis of what we do, and we want athletes to be able to perform at the highest level like all other elite athletes. But the inclusion part is, of course, very actively present in our DNA, in everything we do. We don't work only to make sure that our athletes can perform and excel in sports, but we want them to be able to do it, because with those results we can then try to change society, try to make athletes inspire society inside the world, and finally also change society for the better for all people with disabilities. We have this event called the Paralympic Games, which has grown into one of the biggest sports events in the world, maybe the biggest event that can drive social change. So it's very interesting to work with this Paralympic brands, and we really feel that, because it was already discussed also, the elite athletes are not even 1% of the members we are representing, but 95% or even more of the fundings come thanks to those athletes and thanks to the Paralympic Games. So we see that we have seen in the last decade that corporate social responsibility it's become way more than that. Diversity, equity, inclusion is very, very present in everything you see around you in companies, in all kind of stakeholders. So that has been very interesting for us to develop our movement, because of course we also have the advantages of interest in sports in general, and the Belgians are interested in sport. So you have seen this evolution, and it has made it for us easier, of course, to raise awareness. But raising awareness is also for us about results. It's about finding the right balance between, yeah, we want the stories to be told, and we have beautiful stories of our athletes, but they do results. And when we talk about equal treatment of athletes with a disability and without a disability, we also just want the good performance to be shared, even if there might not be an interesting story behind it.
Do you think that balance now by the media is enough?
Not yet.
To represent the Paralympic athletes?
We've seen a good evolution, but we still feel that it's too much about the story. It's about the story and about athletes surpassing themselves, and that's very important for our movement, of course. We need that because it's kind of a unique selling proposition for us to use to convince partners to support us. But yeah, our athletes don't go to world championships or European championships and Paralympic games to play sports and to tell about their lives. And they are there to perform, and we want also those performances to be shared, to raise interest in general, and to create engagement with athletes, to create supporters, and to create supporters for Paralympic Team Belgium in general. So it is a difficult balance to find. We are evolving really in the good direction. And we totally understand, of course, that it's not always easy for media and journalists to find the right angle also. Because of course, when you have a big story or a nice story behind it, it makes it way easier to bring the story. But we still see too much athletes with a non-visible disability or with not that special story behind it, that do excellent performances, but maybe not the gold medalists. And so nobody talks about them, despite the fact that they are top of the world in what they do.
Yes, definitely. Do you think that, let's say, the Olympic, Paralympic movement would be interested in a project like the SIMS? From our brief on what it is, how did it start? Do you think that the global sports movement would be interested in such inclusive SEAL project?
We briefly talked about it already. I think so. I think that the next step for our movement is really we expect media to treat para-athletes the same way than they treat Olympic athletes. That also means that we, in the next phase, and we already do it, but we try to get in touch with media. We try to not learn them how to talk about it, not that, but you see what I mean. We want to search for the right angles together. And we see that a lot of people in Belgium, for instance, 1 in 2 Belgians are interested in parasport, but of the people that are not interested, it's because they cannot identify with athletes. So an enormous story about something you cannot identify with will maybe not help you get interested long term. Yeah. A lot of people are not interested because they're still feeling uncomfortable around disability. There also, we try to, certainly in preparation of the Paralympic Games, we sit together with the journalists. We try to say, yeah, this athlete has a severe motoric disability, cannot speak very well. People will easily think that he has an intellectual disability, but in fact, it's a normal human being that is in a body doesn't work like she or he would like it to be. So don't ask your question to the guide with the athlete. Ask the question to the guide. If he cannot answer, the guide will do. But speak with the person, normalize the situation, and that makes a big difference already there. And so these contacts
is necessary, essential,
are very, very interesting because just to find out, we see that we have to in almost all redactions in all with all media, it's often 1 or 2 persons that are kind of experts in the
Paralympic sports reporting.
Yeah, but when it's somebody else, you really have the feeling that you start from zero. They have no idea what they have to do. They are scared of asking questions that might be a bit touchy, and so you really have to accompany them on the field of play.
That's actually my next question, which is what are challenges you face when working with journalists to raise awareness of diverse media? Let's say maybe we haven't had in School of Journalism, no School of Journalism have really gave you how to interview Paralympian, especially that they are very unique, very particular. Each has, let's say, their own disability. They're not all the same. So I think that there's a need of such initiatives and courses and maybe training to be more interested and just put the spotlight that is needed on these Paralympians, which have great stories.
Yeah, and honestly, we could do more there too, but we are a very small team, of course. We often talk about the idea of creating seminars, workshops with media, just to give some easy things to think about, or to
Guidelines.
yeah, guidelines, and also, which is very important, is that classification, all the types of disabilities you have, and people with athletes with one leg competing to athletes with two legs. It's not fair, and yeah, media have a very interesting role to play there. We need them because they can, if they can bring it in a clear and easy way, then of course you will open a whole new audience of people that might be interested in parasports and that are not today because they don't understand it. And they often blame media for not being interested. We don't see enough media coverage, and they don't understand. We don't understand classification because they don't explain it to us. But yeah, it's like the chicken and the egg. Is the interest there, or journalists have to
Exactly. Yeah. So, and the matter of classifications, it has been studied and like put in thorough tests. It's like it's already there. It's already well established, but you need just to understand it and know well how do you represent it. Do you think that let's say Belgium on a level, on a European level, like how much interest or spotlight is being put on the Paralympic sports compared to Europe?
We're not the biggest country in Europe. We don't have the biggest delegations. So thinking of that, I think we're doing a good job, especially again with the media we've been working with for many years. Those are the media partners or the broadcasters. Other media, they wake up when the games come up and then, oh yeah, we have to do something because it's the games. You cannot miss that. So I think there is a good job that has been done in the last years. Of course, compared to our to the Dutch or the English or the French or yeah, the media teams at the games, it's not at all comparable, but of course the teams are not comparable too. So I think taking that into account, we are doing a good job and certainly evolving pretty fast in the last years. And we see awareness increasing very fast in the last cycles and always more and more from cycle to cycle.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My next question is to Mr. Fernando. What is your vision for the future of inclusive sports journalism?
So our vision is connected to the concept of evolution, change, and especially focus on three different actors. On the one hand, communicators. So communicators, we have freelancers, or we could say, or we could include the influencers as well. On the other hand, media entities, general media entities with an area focused on the sport, and specifically sport entities. And the third one is sport promoters. So this is something that we have worked a lot in the seal, because we want them to walk a path. So in addition to communicators and media entities, so we want them to evolve from mere communicators to promoters. We are talking in terms of a commitment. So when you are just communicating, for example, there is a sport event, a video report, or you produce a press release. But if we talk about promotion, it's going one step further. So we mean, for example, doing campaigns to promote values, designing a congress, a webinar. So it's going one step further. And in relation to sport promoters, in this case, we could differentiate between inclusive sport promoters and just sport promoters. For the inclusive sport promoters, it's important to, so there are two ways. On the one hand, improving the way they interact with media entities, show them better approaches, and on the other hand, to enhance the way they communicate in terms of resources, creativity as well, because For example, in Spain, we work with a lot of students, and they always say, I want to work for Marca, big sport media, but there is life a part of this big media, right? So for example, in the communications department, in the Paralympic Committee, in Spain, Belgium, other countries, in clubs, in federations as well, and you can do a lot from there. And so it's not always connected to the money you have, the budget and the resources. There's some space for creativity so this is one point. And we have tried to reflect it through the seal. So for example, we have 3 different levels. My colleagues have already explained it. So we have bronze, silver, and gold. And the degree of commitment, it's increasing from one to another in terms of qualitative and quantitative indicators. So, for example, if we are talking about the gold, so we have qualitative requirements. For example, for instance, they have to demonstrate that they have been delivering promotional actions. So for example, congresses, webinars, projects as well. And just to finish on this point, so this path, this evolution is focused on 2 things. On the one hand, training and education to obtain skills and knowledge. And there is another important thing that is a methodology that we have been working about. So it's the inclusive sport journalism. So it's based on a different approach. So we could cover inclusive. So we want them to cover more inclusive sport events, and at the same time to work on a different approach. And is that covering these non-inclusive sport events. I am always giving the same example. I did it yesterday in our meeting. So for example, you have a Madrid-Barcelona match. Okay, so traditionally we talk about Marca, for example, in Spain, La Gaceta de Sport. So they will cover the match. Prior to the match, the preparations, how do they train, what do they think, then during the match, and after, the same, the press conference as well. But there's more life a part of the match. So they could focus in the social aspect of the match, how the different supporters are together enjoying this experience, sharing experiences as well, values, how the grandfather is going with the grandchildren to the how do you say, to the stadium to see the match. Well, so this is more the idea. So you have an event that is not inclusive per se, but you are treating it differently. You are focusing on the social aspect and inclusive aspect as well. How do you connect different collectives through the match as well? And it was interesting what Sebastiano said about making it more appealing as well. So there is a space for creativity. This is something that we are trying to teach with this course that we are designing. So try to make it more appealing in relation to the format as well. And well, so basically that. So a concept of evolution and also working to give them skills and knowledge.
Yeah, in a way, let's say we all have a shared mission, but each according to the nature of our, let's say, associations or entities, their needs, they work differently. However, I believe we share the same, let's say, goals towards more inclusive sport, towards better communication between whether it's an athlete, journalist, and also the overall understanding of the surroundings of us as media. I believe that Stop Racism in Sports, the European Platform for Sports Innovation, and the Belgian Paralympic Committee do have the interest in highlighting such topics. Fernando, regarding the SIMS project, what is next?
Okay, so at the moment we are currently working on the review of the different outputs that we got from the project, the training modules as well, the procedure to obtain the certification. And we are also working on the legal agreements because we want to build a kind of agency in order to manage this seal. And we will be closing the project at the end of July. And the next step is to go live in 2026. principle in January. So it means that the last quarter of 2025, we will be spreading the word, right? We will be campaigning about the coming of the seal, how to participate as well. So we will send information and these are the main steps. At the same time, there is another thing, because you were talking about the different actors in this field. It's important to, and we are thinking about that, to build a space to connect all of us. So I don't know if it will be a digital platform or, you know, already thinking about that, no? But there's a space to encounter ourselves, to connect and to work together through transversal projects.
Great. Would you like to add anything regarding the SIMS project and maybe its relation to your entities in the future? Like to make cooperations?
I think we already talked about. I think it's very interesting for us and a next step for our movement, and that is needed.
Yeah.
Not in terms of because otherwise we will not evolve anymore, but because it really feels like the next step.
Yes, and as you said, maybe there's the idea is there and the need is there, but there's no like a body that can like drive maybe this movement of inclusivity, how to deal with the people with disability, physical disability, like these things that you learn on field. So I think it would be very important to have, because they don't teach you this in journalism school. No. They don't teach you this. They don't even speak about it. You just know that it's there when you're on the field, and when you are challenged, you need to invent something. So it's great to have a body that can, let's say, help guide you through inclusive sport. Now we are open for questions for participants, speakers, even speakers online. You are welcome. Can anyone share an effective maybe strategy to raise awareness of diversity and inclusion in sports from your expertise?
I first had a question for you. So we talk about bigger SIMS, talk about inclusive sport. It's not just about elite level, but at all levels. But obviously, elite athletes are often the figureheads for inclusion and para-athletes. We've looked a lot through SIMS about training journalists and raising awareness of journalists. I was wondering with your athletes, when you have more limelight, more focus, there's additional pressures to perform. Also, potentially, you're having increased commentary online, you're dealing more with ableist language. What's the experiences of your athletes that you're working with? And do you provide training with them so they're better able to work with journalists and promote their work as well?
Yeah, we provide trainings. We see that the top athletes, I'm not saying they don't need it anymore, but they are well trained, they are experienced. But when you see new athletes coming up, of course, they come from nothing because they have no training at all, no experience at all. Because once you're not everything that's below the elite level is never almost covered. So we try to help athletes there, and we try to connect athletes and journalists. It's easier when it's always the same journalists in certain media, but it has also its downfalls, of course, because it's too concentrated on a few people. It's a bit limited, but at the same time, you see that some journalists have really chosen well in kind of their niche, women's sports, para sports, and then it has been a good choice for them, given the crisis that is very present in media. So I don't know if that's a response to your question, but
thank you.
But we could still do more, and for athletes, but we feel also that the athletes want to be treated and want to have questions about their results at top level, and not about How was it to recover from your accident 20 years ago? That's not why they are at the Paralympic Games at that moment.
Maybe a follow-up, I mean, not sure it's a question, but it's maybe a broader kind of a reflection. But so of course, the Paralympic Games have been really a driving force for the visibility of the movement. Now we have para-athletes that have become brand ambassadors. They're really well-known athletes and public figures. On the other side, I'm wondering if maybe it's completely mistaken, but if big events like the Paralympic Games are somehow eclipsing or taking a lot of space in the media in relation to other kind of inclusive sport activities and events. So it's of course a flagship event. It's a huge international event. And I'm wondering if from time to time, the fact that so much attention is focused on a wonderful and huge event is not maybe subtracting somehow attention to other kind of inclusive sport activities. I mean, it's just a thought. I mean, it's not something
that's actually the beauty of the word inclusion. Inclusion does not only mean maybe people with mental or physical disability. It can mean like it's a vast word. It's a vast word. It can mean maybe the elderly, maybe a group of minorities in some city with a sports activity. It can mean people that are like on the sidelines of a sporting event. So let's say by inclusivity, as we define it in the SIMS project, it does not just mean disability. It has like so many words. Of course, within the Paralympic, let's say, sport field, there are things to work on and to enhance. In the, let's say, small cities and remote towns that have a small sports league, which was highlighted in one of our AIPS awards, let's say some of the categories, like it shows you something that you haven't seen before. It's interesting, it's inclusive, and you're interested to read more because it's not your ordinary, let's say, inclusive by like usually people think by inclusivity like people with disability or invisible disability or mental disability, but it can mean a lot more than that. So that's the beauty of it. We don't just focus on,
of course,
on
yes,
that, but like everything on how to deal, whether it's sports media, whether it's let's say the dynamics of a sporting event and what's around it. It could be let's say coverage of like maybe the World Cup in Qatar. Everyone speaks about let's say football, but has anyone spoke about Qatar itself, like around the area? So it can have more than one meaning, and it has more than one dimension to focus on. That's why we have also a glossary that we have, let's say, worked on, developed, like whatever, let's say, to choose the right terms when we speak about any topic. Like there are words not to be told and words that are recommended to have, let's say, more inclusive prospect of your media when you read an article or watch a reportage on TV. So it's quite interesting that it's not limited when it comes to the SIMS project. Maybe Fernando can add something regarding the glossary and how much.
Maybe for the Paralympics, it's
yes
every 4 years, so there's still, I would say, 3 years in between where
we can speak about
a lack of stories. I don't know if you can speak more and how you see it.
Yeah, it's a good point, but I think that there are two things. When I see in Belgium, the good work that has been done by the grassroots on grassroots level has resulted in also changes on political decisions that now also inside the Paralympic movement. The movement is also responsible now for sports for people with chronic diseases or sport for people with psychological vulnerabilities. So they are not also included in our, not on elite level, but on grassroots level. So we raise awareness thanks to the results of the elite athletes. And I think also we have discussed it once the Paralympic Games will be a no-brainer. There will be this need of searching for other topics, and then you will be able to, I think it's not for tomorrow, of course, but it's like a Champions League final, the Paralympic Games, okay, the Paralympic Games, okay, but what do we do to make difference? And then we might maybe emphasize other events.
I think it's also reflected, in the Olympics more generally. I would say for most sports, okay, I'm gonna watch maybe artistic swimming, but for the other 3 years, what's going on in the world.
How did they get there?
It's a trend for the Olympics in general, it's the Paralympics, but it's huge. That is really good.
No, it's okay, it's fine. I just wanted to highlight 3 different points. The first one is connected to you were talking about. It's about the concept of commitment and frequency of applications. And we were discussing it about it yesterday. I don't know who brought the conversation, but we were talking about the requirements of the seal, and one of the requirements is the number of publications and the number of collectives that you are targeting. And someone said, okay, and yep, but what happens if we have a media entity delivering 100 or 200 publications during a World Cup or something like that, or any Paralympic Games, and then nothing happens? So it means that we have to introduce a new requirement in terms of frequency, because we do believe in the day-to-day work. So it's not just doing a lot of publications and dissemination work during the Paralympic Games or any specific, no, in case of disability, but it's day-to-day. This is the first point. The second point is connected to the concepts of sports for all. Gaetan was talking about that, and inclusion. So just let's keep in mind that when we talk about inclusion, it's a wider concept. So it's not only disabilities, but it's about connection of people, of different groups. So, and I would say that when we say inclusive sport, it's a kind of approach. It's practicing sport with the goal of connecting people. And I do believe that the Sports for All is the best, and if not the best, one of the best tools to achieve this goal of inclusion. Okay, so they are clearly connected, and in Spain we say that they go de la mano, they are hand-to-hand connected, right? And the last one, it's an idea that came to me, and I think it's a possible challenge, because we are talking about communicators, we are talking about media entities, and we are also talking about the communication departments in clubs, federations, etc. But what about the athletes, the players? Maybe they could become communicators, promoters of inclusion. So we could work with them to teach them how to improve their knowledge and skills on communication and promotion, because they are in a very relevant position. No? They have all the attention, no? from the media society as well. So every time they speak, they have an opportunity to contribute.
This actually anticipates my question.
Responsibility.
How can media and journalists collaborate with the sports organizations, transform the discourse on inclusion and create more compelling and human-centered stories? And it really comes from like the core, which is the journalist itself and the media and their interest into
in the middle of the world.
Exactly. So just let's say the best best practices in journalism when it comes to not just Paralympic, not just Special Olympics, but in every, let's say, publication or every production that we have as journalists. I wanted to ask Sebastiano, maybe, how does your entity, let's say, have direct contact, maybe, or courses or direct interactions with the journalists? How is that going?
We have not been working directly with journalists in that way, to be honest. We rely on journalists when it comes to communication, usual things, press releases, these kind of things. So for us, our contact with journalists now is more in terms of providing quality contents when it comes to inclusion in sport, which means that when we try to tell a story, we try to create a story that can be conveyed to journalists, that can be receptive to it. And we see that it works quite well, meaning that, of course, there are plenty of networks that do a lot of different things, and they all have their press releases. They send to the journalists they know, to the sector journalists. Most of the time, in many cases, they're not even responding. They're not even reacting. They're receiving plenty of press releases with facts, description of an event, an activity, and so on and so forth. So we saw that this was the situation. And of course, the sports sector is not big in Brussels. I mean, we are a tiny niche. So we had to invent and to come out with something. So what we started to do was basically to came out with stories, how to offer, for instance, the projects that we have to promote, but also the experiences of our members. So instead of issuing a press release saying, yeah, we're going to do this and that, there will be this event, or we have tried to connect events or activities with stories that can really break through. And we've seen that it works quite well. For instance, we have a project, an ongoing project about providing cognitive training to Ukrainian athletes. Of course, you can imagine that this project is a repository of interesting stories, because those athletes are facing all sorts of problems related to war, also psychological issues connected to the war. And so, of course, instead of saying, we are going to have the conference of the project this and that on that day, and we will talk about this and that, we starting putting forward the story connected to the project. And this works because, of course, journalists are looking for stories. So this is basically the approach that we are trying to adopt. Okay, for us, of course, it's important to promote our activities, but let's try to do it in an intelligent, in a clever manner, by putting nice and interesting stories in the spotlight. And we see that it's working quite well.
Thank you. Does anyone has questions? Okay, with this, we conclude our panel. Maybe Rachel would like to have a closing remark.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully some interesting discussions. I've maybe made some conclusions and we'll see if we can agree. So I would say the stories aren't necessarily in the sports, they're in the people. That's not just about elite level, but at all levels. Everyone has the right for their story to be told. There's a want for diversity in stories in media journalism, and partnerships can help to improve access to those stories and make sure that they get heard. An important thing in sports media journalists is overcoming stereotypes and raising awareness. SIMS is a first step, but there's still a need for journalists to make sure they educate themselves and work with the right people to empower the stories that they're telling, and make sure that these stories are in line with human rights values, appropriate sensitivities, and they're the stories that people want to tell about themselves, focusing on their achievements. And yeah, I think they're sort of the key things. We hope we can work together moving forward in SIMS and beyond to raise more awareness for inclusive sports and increase the diversity of media stories. We have an evaluation, if you could fill that in and tell us a bit more about what you thought of the event, how we could improve. And yeah, keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
But if we want to be in a photo, yeah.
Yes. Grazie mille.